On this episode of Locked On Lightning, we address the Tanner Jeannot trade rumors. What is the possibility of it happening? And will we see other moves coming up in the future? All that coming up and more on Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Dankert. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Locked On Lightning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets. Go over to FanDuel.com to get your $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. On this episode, we're talking about, obviously, the rumors that have been swirling around about Tanner Jeannot. He is reported to have officially been placed on the trade block by the Tampa Bay Lightning. What is the possibility of him getting traded, as well as other moves that might potentially be coming up in the future? Before we drop into all of those topics, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. You can follow some more of my work over at boltsbythebay.com. So it was reported by a number of outlets a couple of days ago saying that Tanner Jeannot has been placed on the trade block, or at least the Lightning plan to trade Tanner Jeannot at some point this offseason. Now, I'm going off of the Tampa Bay Times. I'm sure you could find this any of other outlets as well. But basically, it's a storyline that I'm not surprised is being talked about now this early on. It not to say that I'm not disappointed about it. If you've been following along with our player reviews segment that we've been doing this offseason, you would know that we did obviously a Tanner Jeannot review. We talked about some of the obstacles he faced during since he has come to Tampa Bay. A lot of it being just, I think, really way too big to measure up expectations that maybe some people might have because of what was given up for him by no fault of his own. And then also, in my opinion, as well as a lot of other Lightning fans, just not very much put in a good situation to succeed. And let's face it, when those two things come together, he has just really been put in an unfair situation. And these rumors that are swirling around that the Lightning plan to move on from him this offseason, well, let's talk first about legitimacy here. Are they legitimate? Do the Lightning, I think, in theory, want to move on from him? No, I don't think that's the case whatsoever. I think this is maybe just some false advertising, or whatever you want to call it, that other NHL GMs are doing by leaking information. If you're not watching the episode, I just put up some parenthesis quotations. Basically what I'm saying, I think this is really a situation of other teams seeing that the Lightning are up against the cap, especially since the McDonough trade, and they're trying to take advantage of the situation. They're trying to almost pressure the Lightning from the inside in order to trade away a player that I think as well as they do, as well as obviously other teams do, think has a lot of value. And now the Lightning, obviously, when they got him, they were banking on getting that guy who in his second year, in his first full season really in the NHL, played very well. He had a phenomenal combination of scoring and physicality. Something that a lot of teams would love out of a third line winger or just a third line forward. And obviously he has not lived up to it throughout his time since then, especially in Tampa Bay. But like I said, I think that he has gotten a pretty raw deal here in Tampa Bay since being traded a couple of seasons ago. And I think that really what this is, and I'll continue to say it, I think we spoke about it not too long after the McDonough trade. Because a lot of people were then, or even before then, saying how it's time to trade Jeannot, it's time to do this. And though a lot of those fans, I think, have just latched on to the idea more so of making him the scapegoat for the Lightning's issues. And we'll talk more about this in the second segment as we discuss really how trading Jeannot, regardless of how you feel about him at this time, really does not make any sense. If the end game here is to get Stamkos and to get help in Tampa Bay, you're kind of being counterproductive by trading away Jeannot, where in reality you're going to need a player that really fits his build eventually down the road. It's not like you're going to make any sort of monumental move now until then to where you're going to have cap space magically appearing to where a player of that caliber can come to Tampa Bay at one point. But as to the legitimacy of the rumors going back, I'm 1 out of 10, more so 0 being just completely just false and all of the above, and 10 being this is going to happen. I would say probably a 4.5. Like I said, I think that there are a lot of variables right now that come into play when we're discussing this being talked about in the media and all that. And I think a lot of it, sometimes when teams are trying to get rid of players, they leak stuff like this. Whereas, I don't, unless Julian Brisebois comes out and says it himself, I don't believe it. I don't. And I think that's how Lightning fans should approach the situation as well. So let me know in the comments below how you're feeling about that. Coming up, we're going to talk about, why really it doesn't make sense and why it's too early to give up on this guy. I still, it blows my mind that like we're still having this conversation. Like it's the people that are saying the foolish things online about anything that comes to the Lightning are the same people that are saying, let's trade Jeannot, and that solves all our problems. Or basically, for lack of a better word, saying that. So we'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. But first, we're going to talk about our sponsor on today's show, and that is our friend over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Now, it's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. I'm betting on the Florida Panthers to win, people. I mean, it's... I was talking to someone earlier today about the Stanley Cup Final and, how a large number of people think that Edmonton has a shot because McDavid's been quiet. He had a pretty good and clinching game to that series against Dallas. But I don't listen. And if you're a Lightning fan, you shouldn't be rooting against Florida. Florida's a very good team. They are the best in the league. They just beat the President's Trophy winners, the Rangers. And if you want to win some money, hammer down not only the prop bets, but the money line for the Panthers in every single game. I promise you, you will not regret it. So go on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon right now and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So as always, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Go ahead, subscribe to our channel there. Drop a comment below this video because I want to, for the most part, a lot of you on our YouTube have really been kind of the voice of reasoning when it comes to the Tanner Jeannot dilemma, if you want to call it that. But it's really, and unsurprisingly, it's been Twitter that has been just really the Twilight Zone and Bizarro Land when it comes to some of the takes that I see when we're talking not only about the Lightning, but also about Tanner Jeannot. I don't understand. I don't understand it, how some, and if this is you, please just stop. There's some of you, if you're listening to this, you know well who you are. There are some of you that are in the boat that if you trade away Tanner Jeannot, somehow that's going to magically clear up all this cap space. You're going to be able to give a deal to Stamkos that makes sense, not only for you, but magically please him. And the Lightning are somehow going to be in a better position. First of all, that's mathematically incorrect. I'm not going to go into specifics. I mean, Jeannot really just doesn't make a lot of money to the point to where really it's going to make any world of difference if you were to trade away him. He's making 2.6 right now, 2.66 and a half. $2.6 million isn't going to do a lot for you when you're trying to get Steven Stamkos back. We've already gone over this, and if you're going to make anybody the scapegoat, and I feel like it's just easy for Lightning fans to do this to Jeannot because of obviously the trade, and it's unfortunate because I think we talked about it at the time a couple of years ago, if not too far afterwards, or even last season, how I spoke about it, that it would be unfortunate, the situation that Jeannot was in, because you would basically have to have him almost play at a certain level to where he has never played before, even in Nashville, in order for people to be completely satisfied, or to kind of even just forget how much Julien Brisebois gave up for him. And I don't think that's fair. I mean, he came in to be a physical player. The whole scoring thing, 24 goals, 41 points, that was just, I felt like a pipe dream from the beginning. That was kind of like something that I think the Lightning were like, all right, we're getting a physical player that has a little bit of potency to his offensive game, and if he gets back to that level that he was before, then we look like geniuses here. And obviously that hasn't been the case. But like I said on the episode that we talked about him, that if he didn't miss as much time as he did this season, he would have surpassed his previous year's numbers from last year. But if you're going to put the title of scapegoat on any player on this team to where you want to deal them away to where it'll make some world of difference in terms of money, and I don't think he should be the scapegoat either, but Eric Chernak. I mean, I don't understand, like, the scapegoating among Lightning fans makes absolutely no sense to me. I've from the moment we started this podcast and really got involved into the online community of Lightning fans, it's been very odd to me. I don't know what it is, but Lightning Twitter's off the rails, and someone needs to stop you. I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's going to be me. And if Lightning Twitter comes after me, bring it on. But I think that really, at the end of the day, the scapegoat needs to be Eric Chernak, or scapegoats. Eric Chernak, Connor Sherry, and most importantly, Julian Brees-Boss. You know, I spoke about it. I had an exchange with one of our usual listeners. If you follow me on Twitter, you probably saw it. But he was saying that Julian Brees-Boss should have been fired, which, let's face it, there's a good amount of moves that he has made during his time here where he has really just screwed the pooch. But at the same time, it seems for almost every couple of bad moves he makes one really good one to where it's kind of like you're in a toxic relationship with an ex, and for every stupid thing that they say that hurts you or makes you want to just move on to better things, they end up doing something really nice that just ropes you back into it. And that's how I feel the Lightning are with Julian Brees-Boss. You know, you make the Tanner Jeannot trade, and then you get Nick Paul. I mean, I'm not speaking in chronological order here, but I'm just using an example. You get Tanner Jeannot, okay, but you get Brandon Hagel, okay. A couple of years ago, someone brought up a good, example about Goodrow and Coleman. Yeah, absolutely, great trade. At the same time, failed to kind of fix what was going on with the Jan Ruda situation, as well as also Tyler Johnson. You know, that was a little bit of a tricky situation. I get it. You're trying to keep a winner together, but, why let Coleman and Goodrow walk and just kind of let a bunch of guys leave? But really getting back on track here, I just think that, the Tanner Jeannot hate out there is just very unwarranted. And I'm trying to understand it. And at the end of the day, I just think it's because it's easy rather than, looking in other directions for blame. But let's face it, and let's look at the concrete evidence that we have with this guy. Why would you give up on him? Where, yeah, he's not the scorer that we would all like him to be. But when he's on the ice, I think he makes a difference. And, better example, you look at game 1 of the first round against the Florida Panthers. He did not play in that game. Even though the Lightning ended up losing that series, you did see a change or a difference between the game he did play and the game he didn't play. The game that he did play, it was a little bit closer. I mean, there's obviously a lot of holes in this Lightning team that really you can't really plug, especially in a playoff series, especially against a team that I think I said from the beginning. I think I said it to actually Armando Velez, like, before the playoffs started. And if you don't know who Armando Velez is, he's the host of Locked On Florida Panthers, very good friend of mine. I said to him, you guys are probably going to win it all. I don't see a team other than the Rangers that really could come out and beat you guys. So is that what this is about too? Is this about that, he didn't come and save the day in that series against Florida after being sat out? I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand the hate. I just feel like if you're going to make a difference, if I was a GM and you're looking to make moves, Sherry. I mean, Duclair's already off the books eventually. Mott's gone. Watson's gone. Dahan's gone. Dumba's gone. Fleury, I would love to come back on like an $800,000 deal. And you just figure out a way to plug in those holes, whether it be from free agency or most likely from Syracuse, which is fine. I think that the Lightning have enough talent. Even if you end up trading away Chernak, you also do have talent up in Syracuse where you could figure something out. So let me know in the comments below. I mean, this is it's just one of those situations. It's very confusing to me. Just the amount of animosity towards a player when the guy literally has come in and played in a way that actually helps the team and playing the physical game. He's doing the simple things the right way. So let me know. So coming up in just a little bit, we'll talk about more moves. I mean, the Stamkos thing, it's very complicated, but you know, we're going to talk about it and continue to talk about it until we get a definitive answer on a yes or no, and you know how the Lightning could figure things out and get this team back to a state to where they could win another Stanley Cup championship. So wrapping things up, just you know, it's a very confusing time to be a Lightning fan and a very confusing time to follow this team, especially if you pay attention to social media like I do. I don't pay attention to it probably as some of you do, but I follow it enough to where the more and more I read the comments about Jeannot and about what this team should do in the offseason, the more and more I just not you the listener, but some of your fellow Lightning fans, it makes me question whether or not they watched any games this year. So this summer, I'm imploring all of you, if you have a friend who is tweeting out ridiculous things about the Tampa Bay Lightning, help them out. Direct them to Locked On Lightning. So as for, obviously, the elephant in the room, the Steven Stamkos signing, it's going to be interesting to see, like I said, and have said time and time again on this show, what is the magic number to get this guy back in Tampa Bay for the rest of his career. He is 34 years old, yes, and I saw some of you even said, because I've stated multiple times, if he comes back to Tampa Bay, put him on the third line. And yes, you know, on that kind of seems preposterous considering the guy had another 40-goal season, but at the same time, you know, we had moments this year where he showed his age. And at 34, especially with his stubbornness in the beginning of the year to change his game, you know, you're going to have to make it very clear to this guy. I don't care if he's the captain, okay? You got to make it very clear to him that, say, listen, if you're going to come back, you got to change your game up. Not drastically, you know, but do the little things that we saw you do at the end of the year. Playing down low, getting to the dirty areas, cleaning up rebounds, little stuff like that. You know, little finesse in your step, which we saw from him, which was very nice to see. I mean, a lot of people don't realize Steven Stamkos has a really nice wrister. It's just he doesn't use it a lot. And if you bring him back, even then you have a tough task of trying to put a team around. Not only him, but Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point, as well as a team in front of Andrei Vasilevsky. Because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, if the Lightning are scoring 4 goals a game, but yet giving up 5 because nobody could help out Andrei Vasilevsky, it's going to be a huge problem. And the McDonough trade will look more financially mismanaged then than it does right now. I mean, you look at the Lightning team and what they have to do defensively, it's a little crowded. And I've already laid out roughly on my armchair GM episode, kind of what they can do. Now, obviously, McDonough's money changes things, but there's ways around that. I've talked about it numerous times, almost in every player review episode. If you haven't watched them or listened to them, I always talk about how said player and any of those reviews will fit into the plans for next season. And I always go in depth with it. I always talk about not only how they fit, but I also talk about who can potentially be around them. And this summer, if the Lightning are super serious about getting back to a level where, I mean, let's face it, they're pretty far off from beating Florida, because really that's the top dog right now in the East and in the division. I think they could keep up with Toronto because of Toronto's goaltending issues and the rumors that they might trade Marner. I don't know if it'll be this offseason or during the regular season. Stay tuned for that. That would be an interesting situation. But other than that, I mean, Boston is kind of transitioning into a small rebuild. And I think if there was any time that was good enough for the Lightning to kind of get back into the Atlantic Division top 3 conversation, it would be right now. At least make a play for the number 2 spot. And you could do that. It's realistic. Just looking at the defensemen right away, Dumba, bye. Dahan, bye. Fleury, back for $800K. Call it a day. You look at the forward lines, Duclair's gone. I don't know why people still think. This goes back to my earlier comment about Lightning Twitter. There's a lot of people that, and even on our YouTube pages, there's a lot of people that are under the assumption that Duclair's coming back. Did you watch his media day interview? Unless, and I've watched Duclair talk before, unless he was just having an off day and he was grouchy about something, I don't know. He didn't give me the impression that he was coming back. Mott's gone. He was a huge disappointment last year. Really thought we were going to get more offensive production out of him. Watson was just a defensive liability. So, and then you couple that with possibly trading Chernak away and definitely somehow getting rid of Connor Sheary, maybe shooting him into the sun. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. You get rid of that salary, and then you allow your players from Syracuse that we have talked about previously, the Croziers, Lilleberg coming back to play defense. Maybe even some Barre Boulet to start off the year. I know a lot of people aren't too crazy about him, but he has the experience, the NHL experience. Cole Koepke. Some other people, I'm completely mystified as to why they're so anti-Cole Koepke. He had a phenomenal Calder Cup playoff up in Syracuse. Give the guy a shot. You got to play your young guys now. So the pieces are there to have a competitive team. And like we have consistently discussed on this podcast, that it really comes down to the Lightning helping their own cause. And what I mean by that is surrounding their own players with players that could complement their game in a positive way. So I would hope that these moves that I have laid out time and time again, especially on today's episode, do happen sooner rather than later, so we could just get past it and move on and get ready for training camp and then the subsequent regular season. Because the last thing any of us here on this podcast, as well as Lightning Nation, need is to really have this linger all summer long and going into training camp with Stamkos with no contract. I mean, that honestly would be a nightmare, I think, for everybody involved. So let me know in the comments below. I mean, are you on the same page with me as really just kind of almost confused by the pure hatred for Tanner Jeannot Why aren't enough people talking about Connor Sherry and Eric Chernak being shown the door? Don't understand that either. But we'll continue to talk about it, and tomorrow we're going to continue our player reviews. So keep it tuned for that. So in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.